Hello. Before I get into my question, and because I'm kind of the second last person to go, I want to do a quick show of hands to make sure everybody who's here is awake as well. Raise your hand if you remember what the Archimedes principle is. No Googling, just honest, virtual or on Zoom. Feel free to raise your hand if you remember what it is. Some hands. Okay. Raise your hand if you can recall three things from the last course that you took. It could be online, offline, a workshop, whatever. Three things on the top of your head. No peeking onto notes. Yes, no. Okay, some more hands I can see. Raise your hand if you remember the story of the hare and the tortoise. There's a race. How many people remember that? Okay, I see a lot more hands. And finally, raise your hand if you remember the last meaningful conversation you had with your best friend or partner or colleague. Okay, interesting, isn't it? Like the last question got the most number of people whose hands were raised. Um, Now, throughout human history, we've always learned through conversation. From ancient philosophers to modern day coffees, dialogue has been the most powerful learning tool. We remember conversations because they're deeply ingrained in us. It's not just how we communicate, it's also how we connect, how we make sense of the world, and how we learn. So, my big question for 2025 is what if learning is a conversation and not a course? So I'm going to take you through three stories that have kind of led me to this question. And I've also changed the way that I look at learning. The first story and the first picture that you see is from 2012. I was in design school and I was quite amazed by how different it was than anything I had ever experienced. Classes happened maybe once a month. There were no books, there was no fixed curriculum. Each semester had multiple projects, and we were encouraged to explore, experiment, and kind of find our own way. But how do you learn without structured content or constant instruction? Any quick guesses in the chat? How would you learn without any structured content or constant instruction? Okay, by doing researching projects, finding people who know things. Yeah. So conversations really became our lifeline. We were constantly engaging in discussion with people in our class, with seniors, with professors, even with people from different disciplines who were studying something wildly different. I remember pinning my work on the foyer softboard, which is a picture that you see in the first column. And that became such a magnet for feedback and spontaneous brainstorming sessions. I learned more in that one afternoon with just a softboard and me standing there than I had in probably the last semester, right? So those serendipitous conversations is where the real learning happened. They shaped my understanding of design as I know it today and sparked my newfound love for collaborative learning at that time. So that's kind of story one. We're going to jump fast forward a decade later. The year is 2022 now, and we're in the middle of the pandemic. And I found myself designing a leadership program for first time managers. Now, each of these people have about 5 years of experience and have probably seen different people managing them differently, but they don't know how to be managers themselves. So the question that I was kind of struggling with is how can I create a program that was driven by their experiences and their challenges? Again, anybody wants to guess what we did? What did we do to kind of take into account their experiences and challenges? Put them together. Yeah, so we first got rid of all the instructors. There were no instructors in the course. Instead, we created what we called a sandbox, which was a series of live sessions where 80% of those that time was dedicated in breakout rooms. So we gave them prompts, we gave them case studies, we gave them scenarios to role play, all of which was designed to just trigger conversations. And the engagement was incredible. People were sharing their struggles, brainstorming solutions, and learning from different perspectives. They left the program not just with like new knowledge, but also with a support network and a deeper understanding of what their unique leadership style was. And now, finally, let's come to 2023. My then colleague, Harsh, and I started LXT Lab because we realized that despite being on the same team for almost 2 years, our work felt incredibly siloed. We were both working on different programs at different points of time. We craved for a space to connect with other learning designers, share ideas, and learn from different experiences. But how do you create a community that fosters collaboration and knowledge sharing? What we did is we decided to build something together. We brought together 20 LXDs from diverse backgrounds. You can see some of their pictures and all the connections they made just in the first 2 weeks in the third column. And the challenge was simple. How can we co-create an LXD handbook? And in just 6 months, we had Motivation Matters, a handbook which had 10 case studies and multiple practical tools. But the real magic was in all the conversations that we had, the sharing, the collective learning that happened in those moments of us trying to build this and make sense of this world. In my journey, I've discovered the power of conversation-led learning, from unstructured conversations to peer learning to co-creation, and there's so much more to discover. So here's my challenge to you for 2025. What if we designed experiences where the syllabus is blank, the content is the participants themselves, and the most valuable resource is the person sitting next to you? Imagine a world where curiosity is the driving force, questions are valued more than answers, and dialogue becomes the primary mode of learning. So I invite you to design experiences that unleash the power of conversation, because when learning becomes a conversation, magic happens.